Hello there. This is Fimbly Jim. I know it's been a minute. I've been MIA for a little while, but I'm back. Today I'm going to be showcasing my hardcore Necromancer build that focuses purely on summoning, essentially. The damage from me is going to be minimal to none. I know a lot of people who play Necromancer just want to be the summoner, and it seems to some that summoning is all but not possible. At least if you want to do, I mean, you can do it in softcore, but hardcore is like a whole different game. And a lot of people have been at least saying that the summoner necro is not viable in hardcore. And I wanted to work to devise my own build that would allow for summoner to be viable in hardcore. And as you can see, I'm only level 43 right now. But so far, I'm absolutely just destroying everything, and World Tier 3 is right on the horizon for me. So I figured I would just show you guys an update, because I've been playing a ton of Diablo in my free time, and this is like my third or fourth character. It's my third Necromancer. They've all died from something, but I was experimenting. This is a shout out to Last Rites, a YouTuber who does hardcore Diablo Necromancer content. If you want to go check him out, I'll link him down below. He's awesome. I discovered him recently. But he's fantastic, and I was checking out his Blood Surge Necromancer build that uses summoning. But in his build, he uses summons more as like a meat shield than actual damage. I would say that changes when he gets to the later game, but his Blood Surge that he gets is his main damage source, and he gets a boatload of damage from it, and it's certainly good. But I've also seen some other Necromancers who use Bone Spear, and I wanted to see about making a build that could focus basically purely around the minions being your prime source of damage and your survivability also coming from them. So that's what I'm going to showcase today. Again, I'm not fully spec'd out, not fully optimized, but I wanted to get to a level where I could prove that this is definitely doable. And this is before getting the Ring of Mendelin, which is arguably one of the best minion-related builds, minion-related damage-dealing sources, essentially. So without further ado, I will walk through my build. I'll start with skills. So with our skills, you will notice that my skill assignment down here, I do not have a basic skill, actually, at all. I basically spec'd into this for the beginning. You can switch between these two. I did use this for quite a bit, just because it was nice to have the Fortify, which is extremely good in the game right now. But I kind of switched away from it, used Decompose for a little bit for the essence and the body generation, which I'll elaborate on later. But this is, so far, what I have found to be a very, very potent build. And there's a few things here, or at least there's one thing here that I believe is you can swap it out if you want this build to work. And I will explain. I actually think there could be something better that you could put there, which I think Army of the Dead is the one you could swap out. Which is sort of just here for the lucky hit chance for when you eventually get. It's also for the 15% chance to leave a corpse, but I'll elaborate on that later. Let's go to our core skills. We're going to be using Bone Spear, and this is for a couple of reasons. I know it's a very popular Necromancer pick, but we're not going to be doing the most damage here. We're going to be, initiating fights and then moving around, but we're going to be wanting to spread vulnerable, which is what we want, because our minions actually benefit from the full value of vulnerable from all sources, which is super duper good. And they also inherit 30% of your attack damage and your attack speed, which is very important, and we'll get on that later. So you are going to want to get to Supernatural Bone Spear so that you can apply vulnerable and maximize the damage of your minions. And this is not optimized. It's at 6. Not super great. But it can get pretty high, and that's what you want to prioritize, is getting this. I'm slowly working my way up to this, which is one of the last things I believe you should be putting your points into. I don't think this is mandatory, but the multiplicative damage is really good, and the essence, I just find that this build is very mana hungry, so I just don't like to increase my essence consumption if possible, but for now, this is fine. But we're building up into that now that our essence regeneration is really good. So I would say this is one of the last things you should be building up into. But for now, it's fine. This is great, but it's almost unnecessary at a certain point, to the point where actually I would probably switch it to up here, put it into there. It's sort of unnecessary now because I just generate bodies so much. not really super necessary at this point in time, but it's really good early game when you don't have enough body generation. It's made its best. Essentially, it shines the most when you get down here to this skill, which I'll talk about later. But for now, I would say prioritize your Bone Spear in the early game. Just focus on this, and then getting down to here. And again, this is all for hardcore, so keep that in mind. If you're playing softcore, just pump damage. Survivability is not as much of a concern. Where Necromancers in hardcore, you have you're limited and you can die. So yeah. That brings us to this skill, which you should only be putting 1 point into. Personally, I think that. Just because this is your bread and butter survivability skill. If you are in a super sticky situation, I almost never cast this. I don't think I really never cast that. I think there's a few times I have when there's a lot of exploders or suicide bombers, whatever the little blow up guys that can one shot you. This has been that's what this thing's for. It also is really good for world bosses. The death embodied world boss, I forget its exact name, Living Death or something. When it has that like beam, that like death ray beam thing, this is a lifesaver. It is mandatory for that because you can position yourself, but this is just too good. You just can't function without it. I think this is just mandatory. Put at least 1 point if you can get it on your items. That's the best option, so you can save the point for something else. But if you can't, do this. Obviously, Skeletal Warrior Mastery. This goes without saying because we are focusing on our minions. So that goes without saying. Then this Grim Harvest is another one that I believe goes without saying. You get 6 essence every time you consume a corpse. This one's also pretty good if you'd like to use this Fueled by Death. I haven't really tested if this multiplicative damage applies to your minions too. If it does, then I would say you should absolutely pump this full of points. Not sure yet. But I'll have to do a little bit more research, and I'll addendum in a comment below if I find that this does work. But this gives you essence, and this will just crank your essence quite a bit, especially when paired with your minions and your casters and everything. So very good. Down to our curses, we want to grab all of the Skeletal Mage Mastery, which is obvious. This is also something you absolutely want to grab. There is zero reason to not grab this. It is purely beneficial. More damage, and they do less damage to you, and that's a flat 9% less damage across the board, which is phenomenal. You should be taking that every single time if you're playing hardcore. And Decrepify is another one you should be taking because 20% less damage, and you should be casting this pretty much all the time, just running around, dropping it, whatever. And there's a few reasons you should be using this too. One is when you get down to here. So the stun is really nice for one thing. But then it goes into this, Abhorrent Decrepify, which means that enemies who, while afflicted with Decrepify, have a 15% chance to reduce your cooldowns by 1 second. So, this is crazy if let me elaborate. There's a whole bunch of my build that centers around doing lots of damage to lots of enemies at once. There's one of the aspects actually is I'm gonna reveal the secret. It's the one that causes blizzard. I don't remember the exact name, but it causes a blizzard that hits enemies, and each one of your casters can cast it every 10 seconds. And it's insanely good. Chills them. You can, and the cold mages can stun them. And this, you can reduce your cooldown quite a bit on abilities like your ultimate, like Army of the Dead, which will crank up your spawn corpses quite a bit. And result in a lot more survivability for you, and do some decent damage too. It's not amazing. It's only 7 seconds, but it's pretty decent. It's more for like if you really want to crank up your Fortify, which is one of the most important aspects of this class, and especially in hardcore. So I would say this is a really, really good ability. You could certainly swap it out, but I think this is absolutely mandatory. If you don't want to go this far into it, this is mandatory. Putting 1 point into it is just super good. You could crank it higher if you want to get a higher damage reduction, but I believe it only goes up to like 25%, which I don't think is worth adding 4 points in. But yeah. Down here, we have our Corpse and Macabre skills, which you basically are going to ignore everything here except this, which is ironically one of the most important aspects of this build, especially considering we're going to be using Reapers for our for this, which I played around with the idea of using your standard, the standard minions, the sword and board ones, the ones that do 30% more damage, but 15% they take more damage, because you can actually get those to have 8 of them, so you would have an actual like horde of them. But the downside is that you'll be severely lacking in survivability because you won't have as much corpse generation. So whenever your Reapers generate a corpse, which can be from killing an enemy, any of your minions killing an enemy gives you Fortify for 6% of your base life. Or when they carve it off of someone, which they have a 15% chance to do, and if you're cranking attack speed like you should be doing, this is going to be talking all the time. You will be surprised. Like, you are basically always fortified. There is almost never an instance where you're not fortified. So, right here, I've just been throwing I know I said this is the only thing, but I was putting a few points into here. Not super necessary, since your primary damage is going to be from your minions. I would say if there's anything that... This is probably the most important one right here. Evolution. This is probably the most important, just because it adds to your vulnerable damage that you already have. And since your bone skills are going to be just ripping through people, this is just extra damage and it's multiplicative. So you should be grabbing that later on. Not mandatory at the beginning. Certainly not. I would prioritize this. This is sort of something I would start upgrading later on. Not super mandatory right now. Down here is where we're gonna get really into it, and you'll notice something down here that's a little interesting, but I'll explain that in a sec. So obviously Golem Mastery, crank that up. No reason not to. It's mandatory. And we're gonna do Army of the Dead, and we're gonna go into Prime Army of the Dead, and we're not gonna go all the way here because it's not really necessary. We're not gonna need it to raise our. It's a waste of a point because we're gonna be spamming this all the time, so not really necessary, but. This is super useful because if you're ever running out of Fortify, or you need to get your Fortify up really fast, or you just want to like nuke a boss and you want to spawn more corpses, this is what you want, because it'll more corpses on the ground, which allows you to keep their damage up with your Q, which I didn't even talk about, but this is seriously such a good ability. If you can see right there, it says whenever you have all your minions summoned, you constantly buff them to increase their damage by 20% and healing by 10%. Let me just put that into a different perspective. This is, you're giving your minions vulnerable damage for 5 seconds straight every time you press Q, because vulnerable is a 20% damage increase, or they take 20% damage from all sources. So while you're doing, it's essentially with this build, you're pretty much, your vulnerable is like 40% all the time, because you're hitting them with the vulnerable from your Bone Spear that goes through and breaks into a bunch of different enemies. All the enemies are going to be vulnerable all the time, and your Q is going to be constantly buffing all of your minions to have more health and more damage. And going from there, we're going to look into here where we're going to crank Inspiring Leader all the way up, because we're going to be healthy almost all the time thanks to our Fortify. So this will just give our minions more attack speed, which is great. This is just, we're going to be close to our minions a lot of the time, and at least if we're close to we'll be close more often than not to our like sorcerer, our wizard skeletons, and they will do a lot more damage. But you'll be around your minions all the time. This is just good in general. I wish it would tell you exactly how close you have to be, because I feel like close is a little vague, but this is just good to have. This is mandatory, another mandatory skill that you need, because your minions can get one shot by world bosses, and now they won't take more than 30% of their max life from a single damage instance, which is great. And if you have their life super duper high, they will be chilling most of the time. And then I only have 1 point into here, but this is really good. And 20%, if you think about the math here, one hit can drop these guys to 60% or 70% of their health, because they can't lose more than 30%. So whenever I'm spamming Q, they're getting an additional 20% every 5 seconds. You don't really need to put more points into this. It's kind of redundant, since 10% is really how far away you are from healing back that damage that they just took. So I would say not super worth it to pump into that. So for now, 1 point here is plenty. We'll see if I come back to that, and I will probably make another video showcasing this build again here soon. Just like going back over my skill tree when I have it a little more finalized. Down here, you'd think I would take this ability here, but I'll explain why I don't. And that's because it's just the conditions for it are really bad. If the conditions were like health damage or something, it's after you have not taken damage in the last 2 seconds, which is kind of crazy. just in general taking damage, you lose this. And you need, which just doesn't really happen all that often. I will play around with it and see if it's worth picking up again, but for right now, I don't think it is. I'll dabble, but I'm pretty sure this is just not worth it. But we'll see. Right now, I don't think it is. Ossified Essence, though, I think is actually the only one here that would be worth it with what we're running, because it just makes our bone skills do multiplicatively more damage depending on the essence we have above 50, which is really good. And that's just going to give us more damage, and that's basically all you can ask for, because 50% times more damage is really, really good. So yeah. But let's go into the minions. So like I said before, we're going with Reapers. This was the option I was choosing, was debating before, but I don't think it's worth it. The Reapers are just super good. They have a lot of damage. They have, especially with higher attack speed, and this 15% to carve off flesh, forming a corpse is amazing. Super good, and it'll fortify you more often than you realize. For your skeletal mages, there's a lot of options here. I personally never really stray from this because the Necromancer is just so mana hungry or essence hungry that this is just kind of necessary. So, especially when you get your maximum amount of wizards and other guys, your Reapers, this is just super good. All of them are casting all the time, and every time they cast, they give you essentially every time all of them cast, you get 10 essence, and they're spamming really fast, and when their attack speed gets higher, you get more essence. So, really, really good. I have no complaints. I think this is just the best option here. If you really didn't want to do this, the thing is I'm trying to explain this from a hardcore perspective, and I really do think this is kind of mandatory. You could potentially go. This is okay, but it's kind of unnecessary too. I really think this is all you really have to go for. Just you're going to be essence starved, and you're going to need essence. So I would say this. For your golem, so here is where I see a lot of debate with people saying like Iron Golem, the Bone Golem, they're all good. All the golems are good, which I applaud the developers for. They're all good. But I think for hardcore, this is OP. This is crazy. 15% damage that you would take, that your Blood Golem just takes. And your Blood Golem is healing all the time. It's healing itself. So it's essentially like 15% of your health is being healed all the time by this guy. Since it's taken that damage that you would take. So and especially because people usually take the vulnerable right here to apply vulnerable, you don't need it because you're going to be applying vulnerable with your bone spear. So the 15% damage you would take, I think, is absolutely mandatory, at least for hardcore, because this is just a crazy amount of damage to not take. And combine that with the where is it? This. 9% less, and deal 9% less damage to you. You combine that 9% less damage with the 15, you get 24% reduced damage just out the gate to nearby enemies, which is more often than not how you'll take damage. Ranged attacks are not normally a problem if you're able to dodge, which I will explain. There is a way around that as well. So let's go into the gear, and I will explain that. So I have a bunch of garbage down here, but this is Stink Booty, the little devil. This is my guy. So we're going to go down the list here. I'll talk about the stats you should prioritize. I'll talk about the gems, the slots, and all that. And we'll talk about the aspects. So let's start at the head. This one is not super optimized, as you can tell. I've actually been looking for a way better helmet than this. It's pretty much bad in every regard, except for the only reason that's preventing me from swapping it off is the maximum number of skeleton warriors is too essential to this build to swap something off. So I have kept it on, but you're going to want to look for the maximum number of skeletal warriors. You can put that on anything. I found it was nice on the helmet because I prefer more defensive stuff for my other armor pieces because obviously doing hardcore means want more defense. This chest is actually really good. 557 item power is pretty damn good for a level 40 item. So the damage, flat damage across the board, 4.8%, really good. 2.9% total armor, very nice. 5% barrier regeneration, very good. And then damage reduction from close enemies. I would say that you want damage reduction while fortified as a stat if you can, because you'll be fortified all the time. Damage reduction from close enemies is also great. You'll be wanting to look for more defensive things. Health is by far, in my opinion, one of the best things you can find. just to get your survivability up, but damage reduction is your bread and butter too. And if you can, there's a stat, I haven't been able to find it, and this was Last Rites. He found this, or he made this stat very well known to me, was you get damage reduction while injured, which is crazy good because it essentially acts as like a slowdown, like a break. If you're taking a ton of damage, it will prevent you from, like, and it goes, the percent that it goes up is crazy. You can find like 35% on, you could put on all your armor and have like insane damage reduction when you're injured, making you almost invincible. So that's what I'm looking for. But basically these are the stats you want to look for. And as far as the aspect goes, damaging an elite enemy grants you a barrier, which it didn't really roll very well because I'm just grabbing it from the book where you run around the dungeons, that thing. I just imprint it from my little codex. But this applies to your minions, which isn't really well known. The barrier also affects your minions, which is great. So they survive more. And that barrier is really, really, really nice. For 10 seconds, that's a really nice barrier. And then damage reduction while fortified, you should be putting on all your armor that you have slots on, and you should have slots on all of them. I do not right now, but you should. So that's my armor, my chest piece. And for my gauntlets, I actually really like these ones, although I wish the bone spear was higher. I found a different pair. I was experimenting between, there is a aspect of like the commander or something that makes your minions attack super duper fast when you use your ultimate. They get like 100% attack speed and 90% damage reduction or something like that. But personally, I find that the Blizzard, the mages cast, is way better because they deal, all of them can cast this. So if you're fighting a boss, all 5 of them will cast this ability on the boss, chilling the boss, and they can freeze enemies with it. They can, it's just great. It does a lot of damage. It does a lot for versus crowds. It spreads their influence more. It's really, really nice. It slows enemies down. It's just great. I really like it. So I think you should be looking for ranks to your bone spear here. And you should be looking for lucky hit chance if you can. And all stats. I forgot to mention all stats is what you want to look for as well. For your pants, I got +7 to all stats, which is pretty shit, but it's okay. Maximum life, love that. Total armor, love that. All that is great. Imprint, I firmly believe this is one of the most mandatory aspects for any hardcore character worth their salt, is the magic bubble. It is basically a second chance on every class. You take damage while you're injured, you will become immune. And I have found that this will proc even on a one-shot. If something takes you to any point below, like if you get hit, more often than not, this will proc and protect you. I have yet to see myself get one-shot through this. It's fantastic. It's so good. Can't recommend it enough. And then also, obviously, damage reduction while fortified, 2 of those. And yeah. Down here, we have our boots, which it has a max evade charge, which I have recently become, I completely think is one of the best things you can get on your boots, especially as the Necromancer, since you have less mobility than the other classes by a pretty large margin. So an extra charge for dodging around is great. And then the rest of the stats are, they're decent, not amazing, but looking for a better one right now, but so far so good. And the maximum number of skeleton mages is increased by 2, which is, standard. You just want an army, so let's get that army going. This is essential. I know I've been saying that a lot. You are going to want a 2-handed scythe. There is almost no discussion about this. And the stats on this one are really, really good. This is probably so far, one of, if not my best item. The scythe is so unbelievably strong. And another thing that people don't realize is your minions benefit from your main hand weapon damage. Not from your combined, if you have like a scythe here and a shield here, or a scythe here and a focus, they benefit from your main hand. So if you're using a 2-handed scythe, you are maximizing the damage potential of your minions. Absolutely. There's no discussion about it. That is just how it is. And you're going to want to look for vulnerable damage, ideally all stats and intelligence, but this was obviously a rare that I upgraded. And so I have intelligence and critical strike damage. And then the big ticket here is also 30 life on kill. 30 life every time you kill something. That's crazy good. And you get that like from your minions killing stuff, from you killing stuff. So you are going to be healing all the time. Healing all the time. And then you're going to want to imprint with, and fortunately you can imprint this one from the codex, but ideally you want the 60% if you can find it, which I have not been able to, but if I can, that's the best one you can get. Your skeletons gain increased damage while alive. This is almost silly. It could just straight up, like, after 10 seconds. That's the silly part. It almost could just say your skeletons just gain increased damage while alive, just whatever, because your minions are going to be alive. After they're not going to be dying very often. And this is, you want this on your scythe because it doubles the bonus to 40%, which is super duper good. It's 40% multiplicative damage, which is the biggest ticket thing here. So that is huge, and later on that gets crazy. And they benefit from your vulnerable damage completely, so that 21% is just a flat increase to your minions when they damage an enemy that has vulnerable. So amazing, amazing, amazing. Critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. Those are the two gems I socketed in here, because I'm not going to be using basic skills. There's no point in using that. And this is going to benefit my minions and me. So 18% critical strike damage on top of the currently 23% critical strike damage that I already have, bringing us to a very, very, very nice 41% critical strike damage in total. So that is what you want. You want to find a scythe. You want to use it. Huge for the health. Huge for the damage that it gives your minions. This is just super duper awesome. I can't recommend it enough. I didn't used to do this. I used to have a focus and an item and a like a scythe just because I wanted the healing and I wanted I wanted two different aspects, but the bonus you get if you find an aspect that's worth doubling, it's crazy. So can't recommend this enough. Grab yourself a two-handed legendary scythe. Yeah. To our jewelry, we are looking at Necklace of Frenzied Dead, and this is the next. This aspect is the next aspect that you absolutely want to have on either on your amulet, because yes, it's important, but that damage that's multiplicative, you want that more, because if you look on this imprint, it's actually additive. The attack speed is additive for this, and the other one is multiplicative. So you want to prioritize the multiplicative damage for obvious reasons, because it's going to do way, way, way more, and the scaling is going to be through the roof later in the game. This is going to be pretty much the same throughout the whole game because it's additive, so it's only adding. But still, it's good. It's still really good. Put it on your necklace if you can. But from the top down, we have that resistance to all elements, really good. 7.5% minion attack speed. That's about as close to max as I can get. Pretty good. I got a 14% damage for 4 seconds after killing an elite roll. Not the best, but it's fine. 6% damage reduction from close enemies. Fantastic. 8% damage reduction while fortified. Fantastic. And you're going to want to put in the white gems. I don't really know what they're called. The white gems to give yourself resistance to all elements. Just covering all your bases. Really good. But this is going to be hard for me to replace, this amulet, because this thing is awesome. The only thing on it that's not great is the damage for 4 seconds after killing an elite. It's not terrible. It's just not, like, amazing. It's like, I'd give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10, whereas everything else on it is close to a 9 or 10 out of 10. If the stat was a little higher for, like, damage reduction from close enemies, that would be really nice, but it's not, so, you know, beggars can't be choosers. But anyway, onto the rings. So this is the Splintering Circle. It doesn't have a super high item power, but I really like the stats. I will definitely be switching this one off here eventually for something with a little more defense and whatnot. But for now, it's fine. But maximum life on a ring, always love that. More damage to close enemies, that's fine. We're not really overly worried about damage when we want to blend, right? We want damage and we want survivability. So try to get that healthy middle ground, that healthy balance, because, you know, death will just make you have to start over. So you want to be able to stay alive, even if you kill stuff a little bit slower than you would like. So, but the biggest thing here that you really, really, really need, and this is one of the biggest ticket things to make this build like super duper good, is the Bone Spear makes enemies vulnerable for a few seconds after it pierces through and spreads. Sorry about that. I did not realize you could disconnect while you're standing still and actively doing stuff in your inventory. So I just disconnected doing that. So note to self. But back to what I was saying. This essentially spreads your vulnerable through the entire crowd, which is super nice. If there's a lot of enemies, it will splinter through them and make everything vulnerable all the time. So instead of just making the first enemy hit vulnerable, it makes everyone within that gets hit by it vulnerable, which affects all your minions. And it also affects this. It affects your blizzard. So the blizzard that falls down can actually benefit with vulnerable. I found that out while I was testing before making this video. It absolutely does work. So just keep that in mind. Right here, this ring was actually a unique ring that I found originally. It's a super cool ring, but I found it off this unique enemy. Let me see if I can show you where I found it. I found it was down here somewhere. It was a unique, one of those tall, stocky looking guys. I believe it's down here somewhere. I want to, it's just down, walk down here, basically. Go down into this south region and just walk along the coast here. And I found him about down here. But he gave me a unique ring that gave me max life, life on kill, and region. It was just a healing ring. It was awesome. Thought it was super cool, and I re-rolled to get better vulnerable damage. And something interesting that I found is that unique items, apparently, I just noticed, have a re-roll, sort of really cheap re-roll. It was like 6 gold to re-roll the stat, and I was able to re-roll probably 50 times for some reason. I don't know. I think that unique items just have, I don't know, lower price, but I re-rolled it until I got a decent, I wanted to keep going, but I was burning through my, whatever you get from breaking these things down. And yeah. Anyway, this is the ring you probably will want to switch off when you get the Ring of Mendelin. Unfortunately, I probably will just switch off. I'll swap the two because I really don't want to lose the life on kill, which is super nice. It could go up to 19, which would have been nice to have that, but it's fine. 9 is still great. I'll take that. It's 39 life every time something dies near me. But the critical strikes with bone skills increases your essence regeneration by 30% for 4 seconds. This is just nice to give you a little bit more resource management and keeping you alive and everything. So, and then obviously the resistance to all elements. And then this is what my boy looks like, which is he's pretty cool. But yeah, anyway, this is more of an informational video. I know I didn't show much or any gameplay. I will be showing some gameplay here in a second. But I'm just gonna run through a dungeon and show you guys what it looks like from my end. Obviously, World Tier 2. Keep that in mind. So it's I will probably floss through it pretty quick, but I'll just show you how I usually play. I'll talk through it, and then we will continue from there. But that is the build. If you guys want to just don't want to watch the gameplay, that's the build. Run with it. I think it's really good. I think it's really solid, especially if what you want is to be a summoner and you want your minions to be your prime source of damage. Then I think this is absolutely the build for you. I have had a lot of fun playing it. I did enjoy Last Right's build. I did not love it, unfortunately, and this is no ding on him. It's, his build was fantastic, and he has shown that it can go super duper high, so mad respect to him. Personally, I didn't love it that much. I think I just didn't love it because the minions were less the damage source and more meat shields, which is totally understandable. Min-maxing is obviously a big factor in this game, but anyway, that's the build. I hope you guys like that, so I'll show you guys some gameplay right now, and we'll get into it. Alrighty, so we're just hopping into a little dungeon here, and I will show how this build performs. It's pretty much how I would describe it is you're very much like the supporting general of your army. And see, there's we'll get those damage buffs. I'm already building Fortify. All I'm doing is just hanging around. Fortify is going up. But you're pretty much just like the supporting general, and I'm not really attacking much. There's a whole bunch of bodies. Oh, and there's a drop that down. Throw an R out just to get a little more damage on him, and he's dead. And yeah, World Tier 2. So I'm blowing through these guys. But I will say that bodes very well for World Tier 3. Very, very well. Especially, I'm already fully fortified right now. Just throw down your NMC. That's the one thing is, like, your essence will be low quite a bit. So you kind of have to get used to not spamming your abilities and just trusting that your minions will do enough to you know, get the job done. Which is sort of the whole point. So you're basically going to be, you're like a little bit more, like I said, support role. And like, want to get my big guy over there, so I click. Make sure you keep your buffs up, which I am still working on making sure I remember to do that. It's nice to have the double benefit of getting mana and getting a huge damage buff. But we're going to send our guy in there, and we don't want to go in there, so we're going to send him first. So he can face tank a little more. And see, we're in the back right now, and most of the minion aggro is actually... They're taking almost all of it. But the one gripe I do have about the Necromancer is that you can't direct your minions as well as like you would like, where you like being able to tell them a specific target to attack, which would be really nice. But it's whatever, you know. Your minions do seem to get the job done to a degree. But as you can see, we're still healthy. Now we have found this room. And yeah, so we're essentially, like I said, you're prioritizing your minions. You're prioritizing buffing them, keeping them with that 20% damage, keeping your vulnerable on all these different enemies. And like they just rip through everything. We're continuing on. I'm really excited to take this into whoopsies. I hate when I climb back up after I meant to stay down. I'm excited to see how this does in Helltides, because I'm very excited to start getting some. Oh, those guys are rough. I hate those guys. Oh, those guys are for sure going to be some run enders. That's where the bubble hopefully will come in and save the day. Get that going. Throw that down. Get more essence going. Send him in. And that's where I like to click. So, basically just blowing everything up. And I'm still doing really, really good damage despite speccing basically into a very mixed build instead of min-maxing, which I don't really think... I think I said min-maxing earlier when referring to Last Rites, which was not correct. But he's... actually, you know what? Nah, I'm just saying the wrong things right now. I think I was correct at first, so whatever. It's a bit of a longer dungeon though, so just go in here. I'm by myself, which is a little bad, but we're fine. We're fortified, which is super nice. Fortify is super nice, but just get rid of him. Everyone's going after him. He's dead. Room's clear, and you feel very safe. That's another thing. Is like this build does feel really, really safe. I just feel really good, and there is not a whole lot of like, I don't know how to. It's not super mechanically inclined. Like, you're not going to be. I know some people don't like. There's a lot of thought into like the passive stuff, like behind the scenes, like synergy with passives and synergy with minions and all that. But generally, you're prioritizing buffing almost exclusively, and directing your minions as best as you can. So I would just say, like, unlike Bone Spear bone builds, don't be spamming your Bone Spear too much, because you will find that you run out of mana super fast, and you'll be super mana starved, which you generally will be. But your minions, they just need you to buff them with your Q, and they need you to give them their vulnerable with your spikes, and then you apply vulnerable, you send in your man, and there they go. That's I found to be a really fun combo, is sending him in to get crazy with it. These dungeons are crazy big, but we'll just do this. We'll do this. make our way over to the other side. But yeah, so this is definitely like the general, like you're the general of the undead build. It definitely feels good. It feels very fun. I've sinking a ton of time into this, trying to just get a build that I love being the summoner, I love being the wizard, but I love necromancers. In every game I've played, I love necromancers. I just like the idea of having like an undead army of edgy boys. So I actually really like how Diablo's done it. It feels like a pretty cool cross between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, which I did not like Diablo 3's necromancy very much. At least not the summoning minion necromancer. But Diablo 2, where you have your big old armies, this one is pretty close to it, I'd say. You can certainly have a lot of boys. I'll just pop our ult again because we have it. Why not? Low on essence, so that's fine. Just gonna jump over here, get our boys back, have them just wipe that guy off the face of the earth and get rid of them. So, where I would say Last Rites build is a lot more like you wipe the whole screen in 2 seconds, which is really I mean it's badass and a very effective build. But I definitely felt like I was missing out on like the oh, I love seeing my boys go to town and have like huge battles. And look, there's the got a little injured, but we're fine. My inventory's full. Oh shoot, should have probably emptied that. That's fine. But we're gonna make our way over to the boss. Get rid of the boss pretty fast. And then we will show some serious speed getting rid of him. I've been wanting the butcher to show up again because deleted him so fast last time he popped up, but he hasn't been here. He's been scared. Let's do this and let's get going. Give me some damage buff. There we go. Just chunking him. And that is a lot of damage. And see the storms? That's another thing I didn't mention is that you will knock your boss out a lot with the added effect of the chill from the what's it called? From the blizzards that the wizards cast. You'll get a ton of benefit from it. And stun the boss, knock him away, or sorry, knock him out. And then do a ton more damage to him. So that was just a demonstration of the build. If you guys enjoyed, please drop a like. I'll be covering definitely more Diablo content. I've been having so much fun. I only play hardcore, so if you guys are interested, I will post updates on the life and death of characters. So if anyone dies, I'll let you guys know, and we'll go from there. But if you guys, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Please drive and walk safe wherever you do go, and please be nice to yourself and kind to others. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.